Should be fine. It says we're live. Let me check on my laptop.
I'm checking right now. I want to be able to see myself while we do this.
Okay, cool. Noah, I just told you I'm live on YouTube, man. You gotta be quiet. Shh, please.
But on my screen, it's kind of frozen.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay, we're good. We're good. All right, we're good. All right, bear with me, people on YouTube. All right, I'm gonna go live on Instagram. Hey, this kid. Noah, can you go to the other room, please? You promise? All right. All right, bro. I'm live on Instagram. All right. You get that? All right. Thank you. There we go. Let me turn this down.
I muted my computer if that helps.
Okay. Let me see if that helps with mine. All right. You can still hear me, right?
Yeah, can you hear you?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just gonna go here on my phone. All right. We're good. Is it good on your end? It's not echoing? All right, cool, cool, cool. All right, let's do it then. All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Everyone who's on Instagram, thank you for tuning in. We're also live on YouTube. Today we're going to be having a very, very awesome conversation. I'm joined with a friend, a very, very good friend from college, and we're here to talk about mental health in the Black community. So I am joined with Zach. Once he gets himself figured out, I can have him introduce himself. All right, cool. So how do you want to start this off, man? You want me to jump right into it? You want to get into it? How you want to do it?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll follow you. Go ahead.
All right, cool, cool. All right, so since we're talking about mental health and we're talking about the Black community, um, I want you to, we'll get more into it probably, deeper into the video, but I want you to, share your experience because, we were just talking, before we even went live, we were just talking about how, yeah, you're biracial, I'm biracial, we're both black and white. So I want you to, briefly talk about your experience with mental health being, the person you are.
Personally, my experience, it's been kind of like not much of an experience, I guess.
Okay.
It's just not really something that has openly been talked about.
Yeah.
Part of it is like being a member of the Black community. That's a very taboo like topic, and part of it is being a guy. You're not supposed to have mental health issues as a guy. You're just kind of supposed to maintain the stereotypical image, I guess.
Mm.
honestly succumbed to that expectation. I've done my best to do that despite having my own issues and things like that.
For sure. And we'll dive into that a little more, the whole expectation aspect and the stigma aspect of it all. And people who've been on YouTube definitely know a little bit about my story and how I've dealt with mental health myself. And as I get older, I'm learning more and more about myself. And a big topic of conversation on my channel is anxiety, and I talk about that a lot, and it's something I'm openly admit to dealing with on a daily basis. And the more and more I delve deep into my familial history, my ancestral history, the more I learn about my mother and my father and their past, the more I learn about myself and a lot of the things that have been passed down generationally, whether it be mental health or whether it be through something that was learned. But that all has an effect, you know, and it has an even greater effect because we're half black, half white.
Yeah. So one thing, one thing that I found out actually from my mother, who she referred me to this book. It's called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's all about how like you can inherit trauma from your parents,
Mm,
and so their hardships are actually like hardwired into your body. I haven't read the book yet, just because I'm in the middle of another book, but that's definitely something that I plan to look into, is how we sort of carry those past struggles with us.
hmm Absolutely. What book are you reading right now?
Right now, it's a book called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk.
Okay, I think I've heard of that one. You liking it so
Yeah,
far?
I do like it, honestly. I've tried it with like a couple of my clients, and it's actually been really interesting how, like, in little bits and pieces, you can get them to sort of give you information
For
just from
sure.
some of the things that you don't say.
Yeah, yeah,
We're talking about how, like, as adults, we always feel like we have to have the right answer and things like that. And this book sort of debunks that and says it's not always the case. Like, it's okay to let kids sort of make mistakes and decide things on their own.
for sure, for sure. It's cool how like certain books will give you action steps or certain tools to use, and then you go out into the real world, use them, and you're like, oh, this actually works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
It's something, to tell you the truth, I wish we got a little bit more of that in college. I feel like college, for me personally, like, was pretty book heavy, you know?
Absolutely.
Like, you were tested on these concepts, but I didn't really feel like you actually, until like our internships, you didn't actually get to see these things until you were in the field. And by that point, you weren't really sure what went to like anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. School in general is just a lot of information dumping and just trying to get you to memorize stuff. So I think, I mean, maybe today it's not, I don't see it as much, but some types of education is transitioning into, being able to implement real life skills
Right.
for the students, which is important. Like we don't learn about taxes, we don't learn how to buy a house or take out a loan, like we don't learn stuff like that. And those are like real life skills to learn. And slowly but surely, the school system is working its way up there, very far behind, though. But let me start you off with a question. Let me see if you have any, information through the research you've been going through, or just your, a general opinion. Why do you think there's a stigma behind mental health, especially within the Black community?
I think the stigma of mental health in general, and
Mm,
I don't want to start with just general, and then we can get more specific into the Black community. In
go ahead.
general, something that, just the sort of primitive treatment of it, and it's still, elements of that are still apparent in society today. It's hard to shake those things. So, like, if you look at like the appalling methods for some like serious mental illnesses, like, and then all on top of that maladaptive treatment, there was the name calling and stigma that went hand in hand with that. So I I think that why the thing was so heavy around that is just we haven't really broken as far from that as I would like to see personally.
Okay.
I
Okay,
think
cool.
in general.
Yeah. I think I was there was a bunch of, articles and videos on YouTube I was looking at, and they're talking about how when people, it's like the history behind mental health. You know how we had that class, history of psychology?
Yes, I do know. Yeah,
Yeah, so that was a perfect example because there was a huge stigma behind mental health back then. That means you were crazy, like you were a lunatic, you were out of your mind. And I feel like a big part of that history is still implemented in today's society. Whereas, like, if you admit to having some type of mental health problem, or um, you're diagnosed with some type of mental health issue, then you might feel ashamed of yourself for that just because of the history behind that word mental health or
yeah,
mental health problem, mental health issue. And so, like, I think the history has really been brought back into, society where it's like, if you have a mental health, then you're crazy, or like, you're on all types of medications, or you're not stable, or you're not this, you're not that, So there's a lot of shame behind that word,
right.
you know. And I think particularly in the Black community, um, I think it's very tricky because, again, we can get back into history. You know what I'm saying? Like, what big part of history do people know, the African American or just Africans in general, what do people know about that community? The number one thing you hear about is slavery. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
something I found the other day, which is very interesting, was historical and ancestral trauma. And if you think about it, the history of slavery, and think about, you probably don't even know half of what, people who were enslaved back then went through. You know what I'm saying? And to think about, like, I had could have had family who were slaves. You could have had family who were slaves. Like, that carries on until someone decides to break that pattern of trauma. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
And like I said, like the book, The Body Keeps Score talks about how if you don't address those things, they're just going to keep cropping up again and again in later generations
absolutely.
until it's addressed.
Absolutely. And that's where those patterns come in. And I feel like since mental health, particularly in the Black community, is seemed as taboo or isn't talked about much, or you shouldn't talk about it, since it's perceived that way, that pattern continues to repeat itself, and the mental health problems continue to repeat itself through generations, or the cycle just keeps going.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? But
I think it's also so taboo because I don't really think that we know who to go to when we start to feel these things.
right,
We blame ourselves. We don't see much of it in our community because I feel personally like everybody suppresses it. So you're seeing everybody else, people who look like you know, your friends or family members who have all seemed to be it. So as you go through these things, they always feel like it's just you. They're only happening to you.
mm,
This situation is unique to you. When that's not the case. A lot of people are feeling these things, but again, we don't talk about it, so it seems like such a foreign concept that you have depression, you have anxiety, you have other major mental illness.
right. And it's funny you say that because although I myself am open about seeing a therapist, I see a therapist. I have the first time I saw one was probably seventh or eighth grade, and I see one today. And for some reason, a part of me is still afraid or um, reluctant to really speak my mind. And I feel like a big part of that for me is like I might have a little bit of trust issues. And wherever those trust issues might come from is, that's for me. So, like, for example, if there's something about you that is hard for you to talk about, and you still find yourself struggling to talk about that, that is something that is personal to you. And like how you were saying, they feel like it's personal and they feel like it's something that they are going through by themselves. And, not voicing that can be very lonely. And the fact that you feel alone with whatever you're going through makes it 10 times worse. When in reality, there are many, many more people in this world who feel exactly how you're feeling. You know what I mean? And so, that leads me into this next one. I think it really, segues what we were just talking about a little bit. Let's look at the environment from which the majority of Black individuals come from. Not all, but the majority demographic of Black people come from low income living, physical, emotional abuse, generational trauma. And so a big part of where mental health comes from is the environment. And we could go into so many different areas with that about why the majority of Black people might be in low income living, the reasons
Right.
for that, you know what I mean? So,
Right.
that's a whole different topic within itself, but a lot of that plays a role because in low income living, you have drug abuse, you have gang violence. Um, what else? There's a whole bunch of different things,
You
you
know,
know,
lack of education
like,
because you're you're redlining these communities that the money is handed out differently to different communities. Your schools aren't getting the necessary funding. You know, you're maybe walking 2-3 miles to school because you know you're not getting funding for a school bus and things like that. These are all things that play into that.
mm,
And
absolutely,
oftentimes in those communities are not the ones who really want to be walking around.
absolutely. And it's also, there are also stigmas placed on the community itself. Whereas like, don't don't go here because this happened, or I heard it was this violent, and you don't want to be around these types of people, and being a part of that community which has a stigma placed on it ultimately places a stigma on you.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, for now you're living in a shitty area and now you're considered a shitty person. Like, how does someone comprehend that when they're not even aware of the fact that that's happening to them, but it's
Right.
just like that's just how it is for them.
And they might not be aware of it because it's been happening for so long they don't even think about it. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
if it's like it's a shitty situation, but if it's all you have nothing really to compare to. That's just life, you know.
absolutely. And that's another thing is mental health in general. I think it's just like the lack of awareness to and honesty and self-honesty to be like, this is where I come from, this has an effect on me, and this is the result of these effects within me as an individual.
Definitely.
And with that lack of awareness, it just, like we said earlier, it repeats those cycles. You know what I'm saying?
It repeats itself. You get caught in that cycle, and the less you talk about it, and the less you admit these things, the more vicious the cycle is going to become. It's going to repeat itself, and before you know it, it's all you know, and you don't even realize that you're in that cycle to begin with.
Absolutely. So I want to know, what are some things you found? I know you say you got a notebook. Let me know
Yeah.
what you found on there.
So one of the things that I was really looking into was representation or lack thereof in the mental health community. So I wanted to ask you the question, if you don't mind answering. When, so I guess just to be blunt, like, is your therapist black or what?
Mm. That's funny. I think I had something on here like that as well. My therapist is white. My therapist is white.
And but you might feel differently because you're biracial. Do you think that that affects your therapeutic relationship? Why or why not?
It's a good question. I never thought about that. But on a personal level, I feel like I don't feel some type of way because I am biracial. You know what I mean? Whereas like if I was full black, I feel like I would prefer to have a black therapist.
Right.
Whereas like for me, I could care less.
Yeah.
But as someone who's African or who's, their blood is, what I mean? I feel like
Yeah.
on that end, they would definitely feel some type of way about that. Absolutely.
And it shouldn't matter, like the race of your therapist. Like you should be able to go and trust whatever kind of therapist that you choose to have. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
for people who are fully black, I can understand why there would be a preference for um, a black psychologist. And as of 2016, only 4% of psychologists do actually identify as black.
Mm.
So there's really a hard time finding somebody who black people, black men and black women really feel that like they can have that open relationship to, and without having to sort of over explain things. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It's a familiarity between you and your therapist. This is not true for everybody, but in some cases, it's easier to sort of open up to that person when you feel like you have more in common with your therapist, right?
Absolutely.
Women prefer to be with women. Men typically choose men. These are all things that just like you don't have to explain things. You can just sort of give them that look or like that sigh, and they kind of understand. But where there's not really that representation, it's hard for black people to trust. For some black people to trust white therapists potentially, but for some, it's not really that big of a deal to them.
Mm. And it's crazy because, through my career search, I've come to find out that the male to female ratio in the mental health field is like 3 to 1.
Yeah, yeah,
And the the black to white or any other race compared to white in the mental health is significantly lower.
right,
You know what I mean? So it's like now first we got the issue of race, and then we can go down to the issue of gender. Whereas it's like you have a bunch of men who are afraid to seek help because there might not be someone they can relate with
right,
professionally. And then there are black individuals who feel like they can't seek help because, again, like you were saying, there might not be someone they can relate with individually.
definitely.
You know what I mean? So it's like it gets two standards there, and um, especially getting into like with black males in particular. Um, I feel like that demographic is probably the hardest to get to speak up and to seek help.
Right. And I think a lot of that stems from general just mistrust for medical professions in general. You know,
Mm,
just it's hard. It's just hard. It's just really hard.
yeah, and this is a little off topic, but I was doing some research on the comparison between Eastern and Western medicine, and Eastern medicine is strictly holistic. They treat their patients with mind body techniques, herbs, massaging, acupuncture, all that stuff. Whereas in the Western side of the world, we treat people with addictive prescriptions.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like there are two ends of the spectrum where it's like people might have some type of stigma or uh, you know, perception towards taking medicine, or they feel like if someone has a mental health problem, that means they need to take some type of medication. And if I'm taking medication, that means I'm weak and I can't, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a whole thought process that
Or
goes through
if
it.
you're on medication, that means you're crazy, you're unstable, you're this,
Right,
all
exactly.
these other stigmas come with that, on top of feeling weak.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually had the same question on here. I was like, do you think the lack of black healthcare professionals is a reason why black individuals are reluctant to seek help? Which, you know,
I, I,
it's pretty much the answer.
I would say in most cases, that's probably a deterrent from seeking mental health services.
Absolutely. I think it's a big factor, especially in today's society where it's like, you know, it may seem like there's a whole race war going on where there are particularly black and white against one another.
But
And so you got an individual who is dealing with something like that and they might want to seek help, but they don't have the resources or the people that they want to get help from. And so it just distracts them even further. I mean,
so we talked about stigma and representation and things like that, but I want to go back to sort of the image of you know men and then black men in general, and
yeah,
how that could be
yeah,
a deterrent in seeking mental health services.
yeah. I think as a man, just a man in general, men are supposed supposed to be strong, are supposed to be stable, are are always supposed to be on point. Are so We're considered aggressive in most cases, and like we were talking about earlier, mental health is seen as a weakness. So when you think of mental health in a man, you think weakness to a man, and a man is not supposed to be weak. You know what I mean? Or not supposed to be weak.
Or vulnerable,
Say it again.
or vulnerable.
Or vulnerable, even better. I think,
And when you open up about these things, it becomes apparent that you have weaknesses, you have these vulnerabilities, but are you supposed to? Are you not supposed to?
yeah,
And when you actually are able to admit that you do have those things, how are you then perceived by other men and women alike?
absolutely. I'm so glad you pointed that out because I think as a man, the hardest thing for a man to be is vulnerable. Because I
Yeah.
mean, even fathers teaching their sons, be strong,
Don't cry.
don't cry, don't show emotion. Like that's not that you're not weak. You're supposed to take care of your family, provide, and do all this other stuff without showing any emotion. And with that type of perspective, you end up bottling all that up. And this might be getting a little off track, but that's, in my opinion, that's what creates unstable characters. Characters who are willing to harm someone physically, emotionally, sexually. Like that's what creates a character of not becoming vulnerable and bottling up all those emotions.
At the same time, you also have to overcompensate to maintain that image
Oh
of
yeah,
being strong,
that's pressure
not
within
weak,
itself.
not vulnerable. That's a huge pressure within itself. And if you factor in all that other energy to maintain that image, that's such a huge stressor.
That's so much to be like, hold on, to be like, I'm strong. I'm strong. I'm not weak. I don't need to be vulnerable. I don't have emotions. And to have to put on that mask, to be able to have to put on that mask every single day of your life. You know how much energy and you know how like burnt out you can get from doing that. And I feel like a lot of men in particular do those things just so they can have um, that image of being strong, of what a what a real man is supposed to be like.
right. And it's hard, you know, keeping all that stress and those emotions inside. It's exhausting. It's exhausting.
100%.
And then you do things like you lash out, you hurt other people, like you said, emotionally, physically, sexually, all these things.
Absolutely. I think you lash out on someone who doesn't even deserve it. You know what I mean? Or more in particular, sports. You know what I mean? The majority of male dominated sports are very physical and aggressive sports. And
Right.
that's why you see a lot of injury in those. And that's because of a lot of pent up emotion. And a lot of people, including myself in the past, I would play sports in order to release that emotion. But is it worth trying to hurt someone else to be able to release that? Because I myself don't know how to regulate what I'm feeling inside. I'm confused about how I'm feeling inside. I refuse to be vulnerable. Does that have to be at the cost of hurting someone else? You know what I mean?
And I never really thought about the whole athlete aspect, but I guess on top of that, everything that you do go through, you also are tasked with performing at the very best
Another pressure.
you can perform at. You're supposed to be physically there with your stamina, you know, lifting weights, agility, all these things that come with sports. Both male and female athletes are expected to perform at the highest performance. And if you have that mask all the time, how can you sort of, like you said, regulate that? Like, are you able to are you able to separate who you really are, I guess, from who you always try to be?
Mm, mm. I love that. And something I've been doing lately, some personal work I've been doing, is I've been battling between who I thought I was and who I am currently becoming. So there's a lot of toxicity within me that I thought built up my personality. And now the more healthier person I'm trying to build and become is in a constant battle with that person I thought I was. So it's like I'm always questioning my morality, my who I am, what I want to be, and it's like did it have to get to that point of where I'm questioning all these things or I'm feeling all of these things? Whereas like if I had the information, if I had the access, or I had someone I could speak to in the past, I would be able to regulate those emotions. I would be able to, figure out some of the the very buried baggage I had within myself before, coming to this point. You know what I'm saying?
Like, yeah, definitely, I know what you're saying. But that discomfort that you feel is almost sort of like, how do I say it? It's like that discomfort is the cycle being broken.
Oh yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
it's very
That's
important. Very important.
you have to break the generational cycle that you were given
Right.
on top of who you were trying to be. In addition to that, mixed in with who you're trying to become and who you feel like you really are. It's a lot of discomfort.
It's a lot, man.
It's a lot.
Yeah, man. It's necessary though. It's necessary. Like you said,
But
if we want to break those patterns, we want to break those habits, and we want to break that generational trauma line. It's got to start with someone, and it's going to be hard. It's going to suck. It's going to be very uncomfortable, like you said, but it's very necessary.
of course,
Very necessary. And so I think in today's society, it's hard to be a black individual. It's very hard. Like you saying, like we were talking about earlier, you have to deal with racism, which can be very traumatic. Even just witnessing another person experience any type of racism, like all the shit we're hearing on the news and stuff like that, that can be very traumatic for
Yeah,
a black individual. And to add on top of that, you might feel ashamed or judged um, for having a certain perspective on that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
I know for me, just sort of seeing, you know, everything that's been going on, sort of like started with George Floyd, and then it was Ahmaud Arbery, and then it was Breonna Taylor, and all these things. Like, when those videos come out, you suffer like PTSD from watching these things.
Right.
At least I do personally. It's like it just adds on. It's like everything that you had before that on top of all these all this new information, these new stressors.
Absolutely. And it might even make you scared for your own life. It might even question. For me, I've questioned certain experiences I've gone through. I'm like, was that like, did that happen to me? And
Yeah,
the more I think about it, the more I'm like, shit, like that does happen. You know what I'm saying? And um, it's you might feel you might feel ashamed to speak up about something like that because again, we go back to the idea of how um, black people, black individuals need to be strong, or we need to just push it aside. We need to keep trucking along and keep moving. Like the idea of that might make um, a scene like what's going on in society today might make something like that not have an effect on you. You might make yourself perceive like it does that doesn't have an effect on you, when in reality, like it could, like you said, it has an effect on you. But again, we're supposed to be strong. You know what I'm saying?
and I think that that sort of tendency to feel like you have to be strong creates sort of this numbness where, like again, everything just gets pushed down, it gets bottled up, and it never gets talked about. And before you know it, you've passed it on to somebody else, and you're teaching them sort of more bad habits of be strong, don't cry, do these things to maintain this image, and now it's instilled in them. They are not tasked with the discomfort of breaking that cycle.
Hmm. That's a lot of pressure, man, and that's a lot
It's
of
a lot.
that's a lot of like that's a lot of baggage you put on yourself because no one's out. I mean, obviously it's learned through society, but you end up building a subconscious habit of
Right,
exactly what you were talking about, where it's like your body feels like you have to do this in order to survive.
right,
And that might be the case. We can go back into history, whereas slaves might have felt that they had to be strong for the people and their loved ones around them, to look strong and to not show weakness in order to survive. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
So it's like it goes way back, and I feel like that plays a very big factor, um, very big factor into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this might get a little personal. Get as personal as you want, as personal as you don't want. But why is mental health so important to you?
Mental health is so important to me because I have seen.
Good?
You know,
Yep. You lied a little, but you're good now.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So mental health is so important to me that I've seen what happens when people try to maintain that constantly, and then they reach a breaking point,
Hmm.
and then they have to sort of make a decision. Like, am I willing to give up this old me, or you know, sacrifice my happiness to maintain this image and things like that? And so I guess I set out in mental health to sort of try to show younger kids, clients, that you don't have to be anything anybody's teaching you to be. You can make a whole entire new version of yourself and be that, as long as that's what makes you happy. Because this society is always going to be putting these pressures on you, but if you can rise above that, then your happiness will automatically increase, because you don't feel like you're constantly being told who you have to be and what you have to be.
Right. And that's very important. And I don't think enough youth or adolescents is taught, you know, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to teach. I feel like it should be implemented into the school systems because as much as people want to believe that mental health isn't a defining issue with someone's life, it absolutely is, especially with youth and adolescents.
And especially with youth and adolescents, like they're trying to fit in. They're trying to be included in that clique, so they get invited to that party, and you end up again making a habit of these things that maybe you don't even like doing, and before you know it, it's like, wait, who who am I really? Because I was doing all that to fit in, but now I realize that's not even me. And then they have like a small, sometimes it's small, sometimes it can be big, but like an identity crisis of, I don't even know who I am. I know who I thought I was,
Right.
and I know the things that I did to maintain that image of who I thought I was, but none of that is actually anything that I wanted to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you hear it all the time, like you are who you hang around.
Yeah.
And energy, I can't express how much I've been learning but about how important energy is. You know, the energy you surround yourself around, the type of people you surround yourself around really has an effect on you because the more you hang out with a certain type of energy, the more your subconscious picks up on it. And without you even knowing, you're beginning to learn and become someone that your mind thinks you truly are. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
it's like it's a very tricky area of uh, becoming aware, staying aware of that energy. You know?
Absolutely. And sort of just knowing what's good for you. Again, picking up on that energy and saying, you know, this doesn't feel right to me. I don't feel like this is something that I would be doing if I wasn't associated with this group. And it's hard because then you're the odd man out, being yourself, or do you sort of lose your identity to the group, and then you get hit with the label of that group. Sometimes it can be a positive label, but if you're doing things, if you feel like you're getting caught up in things that you wouldn't really doing, sometimes it can be a negative label, and then you become part of that group that does whatever it is that
Yeah.
they're known.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I feel like a big part of that is coming from an environment or an area where you weren't secure. So I've been learning a lot about attachment styles, and um, secure is a healthy attachment. Whereas if you're insecure, or there's a whole bunch of different terms I'm still learning, but being secure means you're able to be who you are even around other people. You're able to rely in a relationship. You're able to uh, provide for yourself instead of relying or being codependent on someone else. So, in terms of being around different groups of people or being around different types of energy, a lot of individuals are codependent of that. They don't know who they are. So when they find someone that their their ego, their subconscious, their mind, whatever you want to call it, latches onto, that it likes, that it feeds off of, it stays there. And once that is ripped from them, it's like your world is turned upside down. That's where you talk about we get that identity crisis. You know what I mean? So it gets very tricky because from a very young age, people aren't taught how to be themselves or be comfortable with who they are, even though others don't approve of them. You know?
Exactly. And a huge part of that, I would say, comes from, you know, society. And as black men, society is harder on us than it is on others, right?
Right.
So you're not given the things that other people may be given, right? So when we're kids, we're given a basketball, we're given a football, we're not given a book, we're not given a microscope, we're not given all these things. And when you don't, suppose you don't make the team, or maybe you just don't like the sport, you're taxed now with who am I? What do I really like to do? And you're forced to sort of adjust to this whole new reality because your whole life you've been trying to change who you are to match a certain image, match a certain identity of that group.
Right. You know what's crazy about that? I'm gonna get a little personal here, but that's okay. Um, it's crazy you say that because something I recently discovered is that my motive for playing basketball wasn't for me. It was never for me. At a very young age, I found that sports um, gave me acceptance. For the main reason being, I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know how to accept who I was. So when I got into sports and I started to receive that recognition for my natural ability, my subconscious, my ego fed on that. And the more and more approval I received through sports from friends, from coaches, teachers, family, whatever it might be, the more that became who I was. And more
Or who you thought
recently,
you were.
who I thought I was. Exactly, exactly. And more recently, something I've discovered is that I'd never played basketball because I loved the sport. I played because I felt loved by the people I thought I was being accepted by, you know? So then I started to ask myself, so who am I? And then it just became into this loop of trying to become someone who I felt comfortable with, not someone who um, felt accepted by others because I was excelling at a sport, you know? And then I really had to ask myself, do I love this game or do I love the feeling the game is giving to me from others,
Right.
you know? So I really had to reevaluate my purpose behind playing. And
Right.
so, long story short, decided to take a break from it to see if it's, something I really want to do.
Good for you, man.
Yeah, it's hard.
I'm glad
Yeah,
you were able to realize that, and hope it works out well for you.
yeah, man, me too. Either way, I know I'll come out victorious in the end.
So,
So how do we break this stigma of mental health? Like, what is something we can do? Any ideas?
to break the stigma of mental health,
Yeah, where do we start, man?
I think honestly we just start by talking. Like like don't make it this sort of out of this world thing that is so uncommon. One of the professors from Birmingham State said that like she gave me an analogy, and it was if you broke your arm, you would go to somebody who specializes in bones, and you would put a cast on, right? So if there's something wrong with your mind and your mentality, why wouldn't you do? Why wouldn't you treat your brain the same way that you treat like all the rest of your body?
Yeah.
I think it has to stop being this thing where like, oh, like he goes and sees the therapist or she goes to the therapist, so she's unstable. It's like no, like you just sort of you need to remove something to get there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not like this. It doesn't even place. It just you're just seeing an expert in that particular field.
Absolutely. I agree. It needs to be spoken about a lot more. It needs to stop being so taboo. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I feel like that starts with youth. Whereas, like, you have some kid who's in elementary school or middle school who's open to saying, I feel this right now. I feel this. I feel anxious or I feel upset because this happened. And then being able to have parents, being able to have teaching staff, um, and of course we already have therapists, but being able to have those immediate figures in a child's life, be able to speak to this child and really break it down for them. Whereas like the child's like, my heart starts beating fast and my stomach hurts and I get sick sometimes when this particular thing happens, and then explaining to that child like, look, what you're experiencing is anxiety and it's completely normal.
Right.
You're
Everybody has.
Go ahead.
I think everybody has.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone has it, and what you're experiencing is normal. Um, don't think you're going through something that not everyone else is going through. And now we just got to
Right.
figure out some ways that will help you when you get anxious. So don't think there's anything wrong with feeling how you're feeling, and that like speaking up about it more will help you deal with it.
Right. I also think that there's this fear among parents and teachers that if you talk about mental health, you will give kids mental health issues.
Yeah.
But I think that, like we were just talking about, if you don't talk about it, you teach them that it doesn't exist. It's not there. It's all
Right.
in their head.
Yeah.
It's made up. It's not real. When the things that they're feeling are very, very real. It's just how will you address it? Will you address it by saying, no, don't say that. Like that's not what you're feeling. You're just tired. You're just hungry. Like
Yeah.
you just woke up. You're just cranky. Like all these things that we say to parents or parents say to kids and things like that. But no, it's like start to validate feelings of the young ones, let them know, hey, I feel like that sometimes too. And when I feel that like my heart's beating fast, I like to get a drink of water and lay down and maybe watch TV for a little bit. And if you want to talk about it, you can talk about it. But not talking about mental health is not doing anybody any favors at all.
Absolutely. And something what I just got from what you said is uh, being able to develop healthy coping mechanisms. Because, and I also like how you said to talk about it if you want to talk about it. Because you can't force anyone to talk about anything, especially if they're not comfortable. So I feel like at a young age, a teacher or a parent's job is to really get that child to open up about speaking about what they're feeling like, not forcing them to talk about it, because then that'll make them feel guilty, that'll make them feel ashamed. And then once they are talking about it, really providing healthy coping mechanisms with them, especially um, coping that reflects their age. If they're young, um, maybe telling if the kid feels anxious or if they feel upset or maybe even a little depressed, taking that kid for a walk or just going to the park or, grabbing some ice cream or something like that. But a lot of a lot of kids end up developing very bad coping mechanisms,
Right.
especially in today's age, at the adolescent age. A lot of kids are already smoking, drinking, taking drugs. A lot of kids are already taking their life at a very, very young age because they they weren't given healthy coping mechanisms to use.
Right.
A lot of In today's age, um, a lot of sex abuse, a lack of education on sex, all that stuff plays into a factor of very unhealthy coping mechanisms for what a child might be going through.
Absolutely. And it's also if the child is at the appropriate age where they can talk about it.
Right.
You're not going to have a 5, 6, or 7-year-old kid who's going to come up to a parent or guardian or whatever and say, I'm feeling very anxious. They're going to say things like, my tummy hurts, or I don't
Right.
want to go to school,
Right.
or all these things, and sort of helping them realize what that means. So you're saying your tummy hurts. Oh, it sounds to me like you might be feeling a little anxious. Is everything okay? Because you can't sort of, they're not born with this vocabulary of mental health. They're going to tell you what they're feeling, how they know how to tell you.
Right. Physically.
Exactly. But if you say, um, oh, your tummy doesn't hurt, you're probably just hungry. You're teaching them not to trust what they feel, and that's where you get these skewed coping mechanisms, and
Yes.
they overcompensate for things by doing whatever it is that they may be doing, even if it's range as extreme as self-harm, or the other end of the spectrum, although you don't see it, but also is a version of self-harm, is keeping it bottled up, because that it takes longer, but when you keep things bottled up, it can have similar effects to self-harm.
Absolutely. And that the 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 very important development for a child are the ages of 1 through 7. And you know, once a child gets to probably like 5 to 7 range, they start comprehending things like death, and they start asking a ton of questions that you might get annoyed with. But denying a child's emotions, whereas like if they do get hurt physically, and you tell them you're not hurt, stop crying, like you're denying that child's reality. You're denying their emotions, and you're subconsciously teaching them that when they do get hurt physically, and pause real quick, we do get physical reactions from mental health problems. So when we
Right.
get a physical reaction from a mental health problem, our mind is already trained to ignore the fact of physical pain.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So your emotions are being denied. And the fact that that's happening at your major years of development is just that's already bringing you into a toxic cycle going into your adolescent and adult years.
Right. And again, to bring back the bone analogy, if a kid had an X-ray and they had a broken bone, odds are a parent's not going to say it's not that bad. It's not really broken. So why, but, uh, you know, your tummy doesn't hurt, your heart's not beating fast, you're fine, you're fine. Don't trust what you're feeling. Everything's fine. But is it really?
Right.
No.
So Instagram's telling me we got 2 minutes remaining. I didn't even know there was a time limit on here. But we have been going for a while. But I'm gonna end it on Instagram. Um, Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed this. I really hope you got some value, learned some great things. Um, we're going to be doing this a lot more often. I'm glad it worked this time because last time it was a failure. But Zach, any last words for Instagram?
Just if you are going through things, just know that it's not just you. Everybody has these feelings, and it's okay to talk about them. Trust what your own body is telling you. You know it better than anybody else around you.
Absolutely. I agree. And hey, man, it doesn't hurt to talk about it. You know, if
Of course.
if you feel lonely and if you're going through something, trust me, talking to someone, even someone you don't know, if you're uncomfortable with talking to someone you do know, talking to someone you don't know is just very relieving and takes a weight off your shoulders. So, my last words to you, I encourage you to seek someone to speak to.
Absolutely.
But thank you, IG. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. All right, we're still live on YouTube. We'll probably. You got anything else to say? Oh, hold on, I don't think you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me? I hold on.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
My bad.
No, you're good.
Yeah. Yep.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to this video before we cut it to close?
I don't think so, man. If you're good, I think that I'm good as well.
Um, I have one last question.
Of course.
Do you do you have any? Is there anything you do to help with your mental health? Is there anything you use? Any techniques, tools, resources?
For my mental health. For me personally, um, for me personally, um, like music is my therapy. I'm I'm the kind of person where I'll stay up late like after everyone goes to bed and like I'll just throw on some music. I'll just listen. Um, Time by myself helps to
Mm,
just you know think and breathe and just like relax. And I try to validate my own feelings where I say this particular feeling, it sucks and it's hard, but give it time, it will pass. I lean on my friends for support all the time. My friends, like my friends, like my circle of friends is like my everything. Like if I have a problem, I know I can talk to any one of them and they'll always be people who I can rely on. So, but
mm.
not everybody has that. So if just talking about it and just taking time to sort of like unplug, maybe some music, if that helps, is usually what I do. What about you? I know you
Okay.
said you talk to somebody.
Yeah. So for me, I see a therapist. At the beginning of the year, it was weekly. I think I was even seeing two at one time. But once we came back home from school, I just started seeing the one from home. Um, More recently, and this is my advice if you're going to see a therapist. Therapy is meant for you to leave. Like you're not supposed to stay there forever. Like you're meant to leave therapy. That's the whole point of it. And so something I would suggest is slowly working your way out of it. If you're going weekly, and once you start to get comfortable, you go bi-weekly, once a month, every few months, and eventually, probably a checkup a few times a year. But that's my advice for therapy. For me, music has been something new I've experienced, and I've definitely felt the energy in that music. And listening to music for clarity, for relaxation, getting my mind off stuff. So, some music is definitely something. I recommend. And me coming from where I come from, I have to work a little extra hard for my mental clarity. So I do a lot of meditation. I do a lot of yoga. I do Tai Chi once in a blue moon, but I recommend yoga, um, meditation, reading. Something that helped me, journaling. I never did not realize how powerful journaling would be, so I really recommend journaling just to get your thoughts. Because again, like we talked about earlier, bottling up all those thoughts and emotions can be very unhealthy. So if you don't have anyone to speak to, getting it on paper really, really helps. And it's also a good tool for reflection and giving your doing a lot of breathing, doing a lot of breath work, giving yourself time to um, really relax and chill. Like you
Right.
said, finding people uh, like friends and family and stuff like that. So yeah,
Yeah, I journaled. I have journaled in the past, and the reflection element that journal gives you, where you can, sort of see your own growth and see how your mental, like how your position on some things has changed. I think that's a huge benefit of journaling, and that's why
absolutely.
I agree. I think if you're going through things, you don't want to see a therapist, you don't want to talk to anybody, absolutely journal. You can do it in your notes in your phone. You could get like a real like hard copy pen and paper journal if that's what you decide to do. But journaling is something that I've absolutely got benefit from, and people that I know who have journaled have also got immense benefits from it.
Absolutely. Very powerful. Very powerful. All right, man. Any last words?
No, that's it.
All right, cool. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like and leave a comment down below and let me know what is something you do to help with your mental health? What is something you do on a daily basis to help with your mental health? And Zach, I'm gonna talk to you once I end this live. But if you're new to Ty Speaks, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos just like these. And as always, stay on point in this peacefully chaotic world. Peace. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Take care, Ty.